Welcome back to episode 2 of A Beginner's Guide to Breeding Canaries. I'm Matt L from the Canary Room. In today's episode, we're going to look at our housing, we're going to look at feeding, and we're going to look at some of the breeding room essentials. So the first thing to think about is how do you house your birds? Now, in the Canary Room, we have a number of cages. Those cages are 16 inches in width and 12 inches high. Outside of the breeding season, the canaries are housed in flight cages, which stretch to 8 foot, or in double breeders, which are 3.5 foot. So we're giving them plenty of time and plenty of space to exercise. As I say, that's outside of the breeding season. It's important in the run-up to the breeding season that birds get the opportunity to get fit. Now, what triggers birds to breed is an onset of light. So natural light between 13.5, 14 hours of natural daylight will trigger a canary into breeding condition. So, in the Canary Room, I have artificial lighting, I have full spectrum tubes, so I can mimic daylight. I have a timer system, which over a period of time, I can increase the lighting gradually over a period of time. I also have in the Canary Room a small oil-filled radiator, so I can keep the temperature, particularly in the late winter months, at around 12 to 14 degrees, just to keep the chill off the room and to keep the environment as constant as possible. In addition to that, I have an air purifying system as well as extraction in here. Now, I have an air purifying system in the room because I keep an awful lot of birds in here and I do it for their benefit and my benefit. It isn't necessarily an essential, but it's great to have. So, our cages in the first instance, we have, you'll see in the shot here, we have a heavily variegated buff male and we have a self-green yellow female. And this is going to be one of the pairs that we put together for the 2024 breeding season in the Canary Room. The cages, you can see, are set with one perch at either end. What you'll see in the middle at the moment is a solid plastic divider. So that means that the birds are unable to see each other. And for the first stage of breeding, I separate the birds and I put a solid divider in there. After the birds have been in their cages for a week or so, I will pull that divider back a short distance. Not enough so a bird can get through, but enough that a bird can pop its head through and beak and feed the mate on the other side. The introduction process is a gradual one. I will then, as we can see here, replace that divider with a metal wire divider. Now this means that the birds can see each other constantly and they can feed each other, but they are unable to get to each other. And what I'm doing when it comes to breeding canaries is I am looking for a series of signs. Okay? So the first thing I'm looking for is a readiness in the hen. Now, hens that are ready to breed will become naturally more active. They will move around their cage, they may shuffle in the corner of the cage, moving the sawdust or cage feathering and flooring rather to one side. They are overly active. What you may hear is the bird starting to call. It's a low, trilly calling sound to be mated. It's almost like a purring sound that they make. And what you may see, and we can see a shot here of a hen calling for tread, squatting, and then being mated. What you may see is that kind of behaviour, a hen calling for tread. In the Canary Room, I run a series of pairs and I run a series of single cockbirds with multiple hens. That's something that takes time, patience and a little bit of luck. But for pair breeding, the introduction should be a gradual process. Okay, so we have gradually introduced the birds. What you need to keep an eye on, and we can see an example of it here, is where maybe the male bird is overly fit, but the female bird isn't quite ready for him, and there is some displaying, flaying of feathers, a little bit of aggravation, a little bit of anxiety, and we don't want that. We don't want to cause the birds any stress. So in this case, we put the divider back in, or we remove the male bird from the double breeder cage, and we try again at a later time. Now, when it comes to the breeding essentials in a cage for canaries, there are a number of things that I believe are essentials. The first thing, of course, is a really good seed diet. So make fresh seed, clean seed available for your birds all year round. During the breeding season, you don't want too much fat on the birds. I use a light canary mix with no rape for all season, so I don't add additional rape to the seed mix for the simple reason that I think it can put fat on the birds, and that won't do the birds any good. So a nice balanced diet. I give them occasionally broccoli, I give them occasionally apple, the odd spinach leaf, little treats and tidbits occasionally. I don't want to give them too much in the way of greens because it can have an impact on their digestive system and ultimately give them diarrhea. I also make cuttlefish available to them. Cuttlefish, perhaps synonymous with budgies, but it's a great source of calcium. The canary is unable to store calcium, so it consumes the calcium that it needs for egg production. So I make sure that calcium is readily available. And then, of course, for breeding, it will need nesting material and it will need a nest pan. Now, I use front hanging nest pans in the canary room. They are put in the cage when I've seen the canary mated, so I offer them after I've seen the birds mating up, and I offer plentiful of nesting material. Those nest pans are lined, so there is a cage liner, a nest pan liner in them, and I offer them nesting material, and then we can see the hens readily build, and then after about 7 to 10 days from being together, from the first mating, we should start to see the first egg being laid. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little episode, part 2 of our beginner's guide to breeding canaries. Stay tuned for part 3.